Hello and welcome to the results stream for round 6 of the 2026 SpaceChem tournament, Elementary Methods in Quantum Wall Crossing. Yeah, this level was designed initially by Pri, so maybe you want to say something right now?
Well, a while ago I discovered that quantum tunnels are not the only way to move atomic mass through quantum walls. So I wanted to design a level that used that fact. And so this is what I came up with.
Yeah, there has also been a previous tournament where something like this showed up. So there was a level called Compression in, I don't remember what tournament it was, where there was a narrow gap between, so like a one tile high gap, and otherwise these two walls. And you needed to compress a big molecule down into something that fits in a one high gap and then bring it across. And I made a fun solution to that where I did not use that gap at all and instead brought the entire molecule through the true quantum walls using just fusion and fission. I don't have that prepared to show right now, but yeah. So I have solved something like this before. So it was quite interesting when Pri came up with a level that was similar to something I had solved before. But of course, this one is easier than the one I solved, but instead of just being hard to solve, it has some interesting metric things added to it.
I'm pretty sure that level, as solved by Yellow Bunny, was basically this level, but with sulfuric acid instead of hydrochloric acid.
Yeah, it was some bigger molecule. And also there were some more quantum walls in the middle here, so you couldn't even really move atoms much up or down in this strip. And it wasn't easy, but yeah, let's not talk about that anymore. We have this one, and the way this metric works is that you are allowed to use one fuse and one split command, which are required to solve this level. But everything beyond that is punished with 100 extra metric points. So you really shouldn't do that. So it's for every additional fuse or sync, a fuse or split command. And then the thing you're supposed to optimize while only using one fuse and one split is rectangle size. So that means, for example, between these two Waldos, there's now a rectangle size of 8 because it's 2 high and 4 wide. And if we move that around, that doesn't change the rectangle size, but this is a rectangle size of 3 by 3, so 9. And you can have more symbols in here that doesn't really change anything. And then after rectangle size, the next thing is cycles and also then a little bit of symbols and grab drops, but I don't think those mattered at all. So it's really just use one fuse, one split command, then optimize rectangle size, and then optimize for cycles. And with that out of the way, let us have a look at the first solution, which is our host solution, which, as you might be able to guess, is not at all optimized for the metric. That was just exploring the difficulty of this level and a little bit optimizing it for cycles, but not for rectangle size and not for number of fuses and splits. So let's have a look at our initial solution to this. So there is a fuser right here. One more thing. In order to get any any atom across such a wall, you need to have a splitter on that wall. So it is forced by the quantum walls that one splitter is on this first wall and one splitter is on the second wall. But there's a bit more freedom with how you can place fusion lasers. So yeah, there's one here and then one down there. And this solution starts by fusing 2 chlorine atoms into selenium and fusing the 2 hydrogens into helium, and then also splitting the chlorine again across the border. Oh. And doing the same thing with the hydrogen. So now one input is basically sitting on the left side and one has been moved to the middle and already gets bonded again to be able to transport it around more easily. And now this is the setup basically being completed. And now it is in the loop that it is doing, which works by fusing across the first wall like this to get selenium and helium, and then splitting across the second wall to get the atoms over there. Bonding them together, outputting that, and then reassembling this by bonding them together, which is rather awkward, and moving all the way around here, which is not really that cycles optimized either. And then the cycle just repeats like that. So this was really just an initial solve to estimate how difficult this would be and not optimized for anything really. And I don't think there's much need to talk about this any further. We can instead have a look at the actual solutions. So for the 100 outputs, this takes 3,500 cycles, which is one of the faster solutions. But yeah, of course, it doesn't care about rectangle size or fuses and splits. And with that out of the way, we have the first solution by not the hosts. And that is by Counterpoint, who is a new player to this tournament. And I don't really know them. I only saw that they wrote some comments in the SpaceChem chat like 2018 and never again since then. So I'm glad to see some new people here. And this solution already is a bit more. Anime is saying that Counterpoint has participated in a few tournaments. Okay. Yeah, I didn't check through all the history for that. Okay, so 2 inputs again. Fusing into selenium. That's similar to the host solution. And fusing into helium and splitting that across. But this solution then fuses the helium again and splits it across right there. So there's one hydrogen already there. And then it does the same with the chlorine. So there is no waste left right here, and instead just this one hydrochloric acid that is moving around in the middle. And then it is going through the cycle again. Red's loop is really just going up and down in here. Once for the hydrogen, and then a second time for the chlorine. And meanwhile, blue is bonding there, outputting and inputting occasionally, and then being timed with the things to deliver the molecule to this fusion glyph down there. So this is rather straightforward and looks pretty cycles optimized, but not all that rectangle size optimized. And there are also one fuse command here on red, and there should be a second one somewhere. Ah yeah, down here, so 2 fuse commands, and there's one split and then the second split, so 2 split commands. So there are 2 more of those commands than strictly necessary. Already adding 200 to the metric. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This has a rectangle size of 42. Plus the 200 penalty, it's at 242. And it is the an even faster solution than the previous one. And I think it is the fastest out of all the scoring solutions. Little spoiler there. But yeah. So this solution obviously mostly suffers from using more fuse and more split commands than necessary. And maybe we were also a little bit too harsh with punishing those with 100 points each. But ultimately, it wouldn't really have changed the results much.
Oh, the idea was for this not to be a trade-off metric, but a metric where you only have one fuse command and one split command. Because otherwise the level is a bit too simple, because you don't have to merge your setup code and loop code at all. Since clearly you have to do something in order to get some catalysts or catalyst-like atoms into the middle stage, you're going to have some setup for that. So this is mostly a level about combining setup code and loop code in a nice way.
And yeah, while we're looking at this, I'm wondering if you can move this up and get rid of this arrow right here. And no, you cannot. Good to know. So with that out of the way, we can look at the next solution, and from here on out, all the solutions use one fuse command and one split command. So we have the solution of Team Absolute Zero right here, and that team consists of Rexcakes, Gigigol, and Zarkail. And the solution is called Last Minute Solve version 5.1. And this is already looking much more like a rectangle size optimized solution. And it also has only one fuse and one split command. The split is right here, and the fuse is somewhere. I can't find it right now. Why can't I find it? Ah, it's next to it. Okay. So also there are a lot of flip-flops here. So what does it do? It grabs the first input, then adds a second one, fuses the hydrogens into helium. And meanwhile, red is just priming flip-flops all the way over here. And then it gets going. Grabs the helium. Also fuses the 2 chlorines into selenium over there. Then it hits the split over here to split the hydrogen across the wall. Blue assists here with bringing the hydrogen up to fuse them across this wall. And there is a 4 counter with 3 flip-flops right here. for blue to run through this loop and this thing, yeah, 4 times, I think. And after that, so all of this is still initialization, and then this right here is the loop where it ends up. So now that the 2 chlorines are there, the initialization is done. There's a selenium and hydrogen in there. These 3 grab drops together with a flip-flop just mean that whenever red passes through there, it swaps those 2 atoms. And yeah, now it's in its main loop, where blue provides a hydrogen atom right here next to the other hydrogen atom. Red hits fuse and then swaps these 2. And it splits this one and drops it right there. And all of the things it does here don't really matter other than hitting the zinc ones, which causes blue to drop the chlorine over there. So they fuse, swap places, and then split over there, bonding the output and eventually hitting the output command right there once another zinc gets hit. So yeah, the actual loop that is running here on blue is only this 2x4 area. And for red, it is mostly the things on the right side here. And on the left side, it only really matters that it hits the zinc once, and all the other commands here are for the setup. So yeah, there is a lot of space here used just for setup, and then really not that much for the actual handling of the throughput.
With an approach like this, an entire hydrochloric acid has to end up in the middle before we can proceed.
Yeah. So for this approach, this already seems pretty good. And the way to make this better is probably to merge some of the setup with the loop that is running later on in some way to make it take up less space overall. So Anning points out that you could also use helium and argon in the middle. So argon is element 18. So instead of 17, you could have 18 in the middle, and when splitting that, you put the 17 on the right and leave the 18 in the middle, and helium works the same in the middle. But since you are already given hydrogen and chlorine, it's usually easier for most solutions to just use hydrogen and chlorine rather than helium and argon, I would think. But that is definitely something that you can also do. Also, Anning points out that it would be possible to only have a hydrogen atom in the middle. And yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that would look, but I'm sure there are options for how to handle these things. Yeah, so in this middle loop, there's usually chlorine and hydrogen here. And you could also have some other things there. That's the point. Okay. So from now on, we don't really need to count fuses and splits anymore. This has a rectangle size of 4 by 7, so 28. Which is already a lot better than the 242 from the previous solution. Also takes a bit longer, so yeah, that's that. Now we have the next solution, which is by Sabocar, and it is called Potassium Ferry. So Sabocar is the only one using this way of getting hydrochloric acid across. And this way looks like this. First of all, get two inputs, split one of them across, and then use all of these things. So there's argon there, which we have been talking about. And now there's even potassium. So that is basically one hydrochloric acid fused together, plus one hydrogen from a second hydrochloric acid. And yeah, this might be what Anning May was talking about with leaving one hydrogen in the middle, because potassium now gets split down, so that's fluorine. Split again and fuse that into silicon, fuse into sulfur and into chlorine. And then there's only helium left, which splits into two hydrogens. So there's this hydrogen, some people might call it a catalyst, left right here. And the two building blocks for hydrochloric acid have made it across. And then it's running through this loop again, because the flip-flop counter just counts how many times you need to do this to create chlorine, and it doesn't really care that hydrogen is done earlier. And bond and drop and output. Moves this back across. And just fuses a new input into there. And red is just running on this really simple loop right here. Every time a sink gets hit, it grabs, fuses, drops, and splits. So that is one way of getting around the fuse and split restriction. Just have one Waldo hit those on command and use a sink as triggering fuse and split. Yeah, and you can still see that there is actually a bit of free space, especially on the red Waldo. On the blue Waldo, not so much. Only really this one space. And yeah, red has this really simple loop and does this just for initialization. Meanwhile, blue pretty much uses all of its symbols, not just for initialization, but also just for its loop. Yeah, and the rectangle size right here is 3 by 8, so 24, which is 4 better than the 28 from the previous solution. Yeah, due to all of this time spent here, this is once again not the fastest solution. Also, just having red be in this dumb loop and blue doing pretty much everything is also not great for cycles. But yeah, in terms of rectangle size, this is already really good. Takes 7,821, so it is not our slowest solution, but definitely on the slower side. And with that, we can already move to the next solution, which is by Alliterative Allies, which is a team consisting of Tough Thought and Britboy. And it is called 24 Area. This time it is not 3x8, but 4x6 instead. And it looks really dense with a lot of grab drops all over the place. So what does it do? So it gets the first input, moves it around a bit, and then debonds it to have hydrogen there and chlorine there. And red is just sitting on a lot of sinks while blue is running through its loop and moving atoms around here on the left side.
It's not common to see the words area appear in a name of a solution in SpaceChem. Maybe in Opus Magnum it would be more common.
Yeah. Then blue handles the second input basically the same way it handled the first input, just splitting it and adding it to this all of these grab drops. And then once it passes all the way through, so the first chlorine, it fuses into the other chlorine that was sitting down there. So that is now selenium. And then it goes to the right side again and doesn't do anything there. And now it's also fusing the hydrogens into helium. Meanwhile, red has finally seen enough sinks and is starting to do something, such as hitting the split right here to split the chlorines again. And yeah, blue continues doing what it's been doing all this time. Red grabs this chlorine. Now it splits the helium into two hydrogens. And now red is running through a loop similar to what blue is doing over here with these 4 grab drops and the fusion up there. So now there are 2 chlorines, and blue hits the fuse to fuse chlorines into selenium here, while also fusing chlorines into selenium up there. And then red hits split to split this selenium into chlorines and also this hydrogen, this helium into 2 hydrogens down there. So we've seen solutions which carry around atoms in a loop in the middle, but this one chooses to do this in the middle and on the left side, which is a rather unique way of solving this. I think the upside of this way of doing things is that it basically requires no initialization at all. It can just go straight into its loop, and the loop works no matter if it actually has atoms to handle or if it's still empty. And yeah, red is just sitting on some sinks before it gets into its loop, so maybe that's not entirely true, but mostly true. I wonder if red could also already go into its loop earlier, but it might actually hit some splits when there's something here that you don't want to split yet. So yeah, maybe red has to wait a bit, but blue can just go through its normal loop all the time, and red just waits for a bit and then eventually goes into its loop. So since blue's loop already includes an input symbol right here, if you make this a little bit slower, I think it should be possible to have blue start right here and red wait even longer. But yeah, then when red just has to wait for some number of things before going into its loop, maybe you can save some space here. I don't know. Maybe it's also fine to have one input on it. But I'm not really seeing an easy way of saving any space here with blue, and that seems to be the limiting factor why the rectangle size cannot go down. Yeah, Tough Thought is saying that the input on red is just to save cycles. That makes sense.
The solution appears to be limited by the 4x2 red loop. I mean, in height.
Yeah. And you obviously have to go into the G column to actually bond the outputs together.
So the route to improve this would be to get rid of the B file.
Yeah. But I don't think we actually have any solution that doesn't use the B file, do we? I don't remember. I don't think we do. So not using the B file is really restrictive. Yeah.
It's a bit unfortunate that there are a lot of scattered atoms in the input area that make it difficult to maneuver.
Yeah, I think that is the trade-off here, that you have these scattered atoms that make it a little bit hard, but on the other side, you don't need to have any special pathing for initialization on blue and not really on red, other than wasting time and things. Okay. That is this solution. Takes 7001 cycles and 63 symbols, but most importantly, an area of 24. So with that out of the way, we can already get into the top 3 solutions. And the third place goes to, spoiler, Big Mango Head with Strategy 1 version 7. This is a 3x8 solution, so also 24 area. Let's have a look at how this works. So there are 2 inputs again. The hydrogens get fused into helium, and 1 chlorine gets dropped there as waste and will not get touched again. Also, yeah, the blue Waldo has a fuse command here, and the red Waldo has a split command there, so that's where those are. So it's already splitting the chlorine to move it across and then fusing it back together. And then doing the same thing for helium, I would think.
Yeah, this is so that both atoms can be handled with the same structure.
Yeah, but this time it actually does not move the atom up right here. So Big Mango Head is saying with helium, one complexity is that the split is timed so that it doesn't split the chlorine by accident. And because there's another fission laser here, I would think. So that should never activate when the chlorine is on top of it. Or, yeah, during initialization at least. Okay.
So I picked the molecule such that it would have two fundamentally different atoms. One atom, if both atoms in that molecule had atomic mass more than one, and then it would simply shuttle both with a split fuse circuit. So you would just it would be pretty easy to just do it twice. So I thought the puzzle would be more interesting if one of these would be hydrogen, since hydrogen doesn't split further. And the other atom was picked, just said that the atom that results by fusing two of them is not noble gas. So you could use that fact if you wanted to.
Okay. So now there's selenium and hydrogen in there. The selenium gets split now into chlorine. So there are these 4 grab drops in the middle, and blue passes through them actually in slightly different ways to swap these atoms around. So at first it comes in from the left side and moves them like this. And then it also handles the output, and then it comes in from the right side because it doesn't need to grab there anymore and just moves them back into this position, but now they have swapped. And there it hits the fuse again. So yeah, this solution leaves 1 chlorine here as waste and also 1 hydrogen here as waste. And those just sit there and don't do anything.
It's because we don't have any bonders in the input area. Otherwise, we could debond the first input molecule to use in supporting later parts of the solution.
Yeah, also red just is in this very simple loop right here with the 2 sinks, where it just hits the split 1 or 2 cycles after a sink. And then every second time it hits output and input. And blue has the more complicated path, which is like swapping those two around, hitting the sink in between, bonding and dropping over there, and also grabbing a new atom from here, which conveniently is either a chlorine from the input or then a hydrogen that gets left there when the chlorine fuses across this wall.
This is really natural when you only have one split instruction to work with. So it's convenient to have it hit in a simple loop. That simply happens. I mean, there's a single split instruction, and the way you use it to accomplish different tasks is to just have it occur under different circumstances.
Hey, Big Mango Head is saying, yeah, I designed the solution by starting with blue and then just doing whatever was necessary with red to make initialization work. The split was actually initially on blue, but I needed red to split at a specific time during initialization. Okay. So here the trade-off with the area is basically that blue uses pretty much the entire area for its loop, and red has a very tiny loop and uses the rest of the area for its initialization. And yeah, blue has this one grab here, which is only hit during initialization, and then these few commands down here, which I think only do something during initialization. So yeah, pretty much these two columns right here are only used during initialization. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, not to mention inputs and outputs were placed not opposite each other, but both in the bottom slots, because Yellow Bunny said when I first designed this puzzle that ferrying them diagonally would be tedious. And amazingly, this works out quite well with this metric. Yeah, I think if you wanted to really optimize the solution, you would get rid either of the H file or the A file. And A file seems more likely.
Big Mango Head is also saying, I'm sad I couldn't make it less white. I think it's definitely possible. I didn't have much time for this puzzle, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay, but it's still a good solution. It's a little bit faster than the ones we've seen in the previous spots.
Well, of course, it's faster.
Yeah,
because
it has to be.
better.
So, yeah. This one was 24 area and 7,800 cycles, then down to 7,000 cycles, and now down to 6,500 cycles. Okay, so in second place, we have Anningmay with FAT24 4x6. So another 24 area solution, and this one has to be even faster now. Let's see how that works. Okay, splitting the first output and then input and then fusing across immediately, not using two inputs for that. So there is now a chlorine sitting there, and then the second input arrives. And blue has this loop right here with 3 grab drops and the flip-flop we've seen before that swaps around between those two positions. Now there is a convenient 2 fusion lasers in a row here. So when one of these Waldos hits the fusion thing, which is right here, the hydrogens fuse into helium and the chlorines fuse into selenium, like that. And then these two places get swapped again. A split gets hit by blue, while the red Waldo has the atom on top of this fission laser, and that's the other fission laser right there. So now there's hydrogen in there and chlorine in there. Red moves this hydrogen down into blue's loop. And then red is grabbing this and placing it up there eventually. Blue is swapping the middle atoms around to fuse and split accordingly. Okay, so blue's loop is doing most of the work here, and red is just on a stupid loop here with the two things and grab, drop, and output over here. So everything that red does is handle the outputs, and it even needs an assist from blue to hit the bond command. And the rest of red is just initialization. While blue has everything be part of its normal path except for this input, which does some initialization. Okay, let's look at the initialization again. So red is bringing the first chlorine across by conveniently timed split and fuse on blue, and drops it there. Then blue already starts handling inputs.
Also, if you flip this solution around the 6th rank.
Yeah, should be possible to flip this around. And yeah, while blue is already handling the first input the way it does in its usual loop, red is bringing hydrogen over there because it needs that fusion to bring the first helium, the first hydrogen into the middle by splitting a helium somewhere. So that's up there. And then grabbing that and bringing it into blue's loop right in time for blue to fuse it. And then it enters its stupid loop over there. So blue basically immediately goes into running its loop, and red is very nicely timed around it to do the initialization. So this is really like cycle optimized for that. At least cycle optimized for having red be on a stupid loop.
We are forced into some complexity by the fact that if we output the hydrochloric acids on G4, G5, and we cannot output from G4, G5 because G4 is not in the output zone. So if the output zone were one tile higher, it would be possible, and there would be little complexity in the output. Even if we don't, so the way to achieve that, to practically move the output zone, would be to flip the entire solution around the 6th rank, which would then probably make for easier output.
Okay, so let's try that. If we mirror this vertically, destroy the smiley face that is attempted to be drawn with those bonders as eyes, and move this over here. This still works. And then
No, I have no concrete suggestions for what to do next, but
yeah,
surely it will be simpler.
You can just bond here, drop here, and have it stick out or something like that. I'm not sure if that would really be the way to getting the rectangle size any smaller, but maybe. I mean,
no, don't output with red at all.
Yeah.
Practically, you can place the output commands on like E7 for blue.
So probably what you would be trying to get rid of here is the B file. And that seems difficult. But if you don't need red all the way over here, maybe you can move things around.
So we are limited by the height. We are limited in the red loop at the very right and in some setup code in red. Actually, I don't quite know if it's possible to shrink blue that way.
Yeah, okay, so there is some potential to play around with this and simplify some things, but whether it leads to actually reducing the rectangle size is questionable, but maybe we can leave that as an exercise for the viewer to optimize this further.
But surely if the output were simpler, then this would lead to a faster solution.
Yeah.
At least.
So let's undo that and have a look at the way it was submitted. Those are meant to be eyes of a smiley face up there. Or a funny face. Okay. So that is the second place solution. And now we move on to the first place, which is Team Kuokre with a better solve. Copy, 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 some number of copies. And that team consists of Bruchios and Davichi. Oh, I didn't run yours, sorry. Let's run this to completion. It only takes 4,675 cycles, which is quite a significant drop from 6,500 before.
So the question remains, what's the way forward? Do you find a way to go faster, or do you find a way to find improvement in one of the primary metrics?
May feels like 3x7 is possible, and Rex Kicks is saying it's Brookie, so both. And Big Mango Head will be disappointed if it isn't smaller. So yeah, it is smaller, and it is indeed 3x7. But the extra bonders are in weird places. Make that a little nicer.
You made it worse.
Hmm?
You made it worse.
How's that worse than these random placements?
Because now... okay, this is good as well.
Okay. So let's have a look at the actual solution rather than the placement of those two bonders. So first input gets moved over there, and the second input gets moved on there, and then blue goes into some loop.
Yeah, so this is basically Big Mango Head's opening.
Meanwhile, red grabs that, uses there to get helium, and it leaves a chlorine over there, never to be touched again. Now this solution also has the 4 grab drops like that, which
I mean, this is Big Mango Head's opening in that we leave an exchanges chlorine atom.
But Big Mango Head's solution also leaves an extraneous hydrogen atom, which the solution does not do.
Well, the problem with most SpaceChem puzzles that have initialization in them, in that you often want to get one more of one of the atoms in the input molecule. I think in the 63 Corby campaign, there's a whole puzzle that is only made playable by including an additional input that is only used once. Would you mind to take a quick detour for that?
Sure. So where do you want to go?
Go to the DLC campaign. Oh, you don't have it solved, never mind.
Yeah, this is just a live stream thingy which does not have any spoilers anywhere, so I haven't solved anything in it. So let's maybe not do that. What were we doing? This one.
Elementary methods in Consumable Crossing.
So this is all still initialization, while blue is already kind of going through its loop, and red is doing the initialization. So notice that this bounce back here with the fuse both restores the chlorine that was split across the walls, and then immediately fuses another chlorine into it. So now there's helium and selenium in the middle, which just need to get split across, and then one output is already done. And red also brings the hydrogen there to be fused into the next hydrogen up there. So blue is just running.
This solution does implement the idea we had previously with anime solutions. With anime's solution. In that Brocchios builds the input to the bottom. And actually it does take one more space. I wonder... So it outputs from G7, G8. I wonder if Brocchios had the right orientation from the start, or he had it wrong at first and then flipped it.
Yeah, so blue is just going through this loop all the time, which advances these atoms by one spot counterclockwise right there, then hits the fuse command twice, hits the split command and a sync. And red does all the other things. So that means bonding the output and outputting it, and waiting again on a sync, getting an input, holding it there while on the sync, then dropping the other input there and sitting on a sync there, and then handling the output again while also sitting twice on that sync for the two output atoms. So that is a pretty small loop on blue here, and also a rather small loop on red, which just goes left and right here and leaves the top and bottom for initialization. And blue has all of the space for initialization, this 3x3. And yeah, that seems to be enough to reach a size of 3x7, so 21.
Clearly, no improvement is possible with this kind of solution, because there is no way not to use the A file, because otherwise there would be no space for the fusion waste system. Only way to be this solution would be to organize the width and height differently. So like 5x4 or 4x4. No, 4x4 is not possible, because width can never be lower than 5.
Yeah, you need to get from the C file to the G file. That requires a width of 5. So 5x4 might be possible. We are not sure, but nobody has done it. And yeah, 6x3, I can't rule it out entirely, but doesn't seem likely at all. And so 7x3 is the best that we have.
Well, 5x4 may be playable if you do the same opening as here, and your waste chlorine atom is again on the outside, so it doesn't impede your other operations. By the way, I wonder if this solution tolerates switching the A6 rotate to the other kind of rotate.
A6, can try that. Yes, it does. You can also leave your waist up or down here or up there, it doesn't really matter. And yeah, it takes 4,853 cycles, so it isn't even that slow, while still being the smallest area solution. So congratulations to Team Kurokwe on getting the first place solution here. This is really nice. And with that, we have some more fun solutions. So do you want to re-ask your question that you asked with this round?
No, I don't. I think it will be evident from the solution.
Actually, we have one other solution first by Enningmay. So Enningmay has a fat 24, which is 4/6, and a skinny 24, which is 3/8. So this solution only uses the A file right here, which feels not that great, but there's not an easy way to get rid of that. And it also goes into the H file, which is not really possible to get rid of without redesigning everything. Let's just have a quick look at what it does. So selenium, helium. It has the 3 grab drops for the flip-flop. It uses timing to split at both places at the same time and fuses there. So yeah, this is pretty similar in what it's doing to other solutions we've seen before, also like Enningmay's solution.
Well, this is Enningmay's solution.
Yeah, but Enningmay's scoring solution. So there's nothing groundbreaking new here, it's just in a slightly different layout.
Also, this swap circuit seems to be really popular.
Yeah,
it has first been demonstrated in the warm-up round.
So you have basically 2 options. Either you have 3 grab drops and run through it twice, but can't really do anything in between because like when you arrive here for the first time, you're carrying an atom and can't cross any walls. Or you have 4 grab drops and yeah, run through it also twice, but you can leave it in between and do other things, which the top solution did. So it had 4 grab drops and it fuses and splits after already cycling it by 1 position rather than swapping across. And this one has 8,888 cycles, which is pretty nice. And I don't see any obvious ways of making your solution intentionally reach that. So that should be taken into consideration when awarding fun points for this. Next, we have 2 solutions that answer the question, do you need 2 fusion lasers to solve this level? And the answer is no. You can create arbitrarily many outputs with only 1 fusion laser. So 2 people submitted a solution to this, and I think Big Mango Head also wrote that in text form, but didn't make a solution out of that. So
the way you do this is you skip a fusion laser that's contained entirely within the input zone. Amazingly, this results in a playable puzzle still.
So we can see there's some waste stored all over the place, but this is also only a proof of concept and not really optimized or beautified in any way. So here there is this loop with 4 grab drops, just not arranged as a square. That has a hydrogen and a selenium on it currently. And that's the first output already. And for this loop, you obviously don't need another fusion or fission laser, you just need those 2, but you needed 1 extra up there just to get the first atoms across the first wall for initialization. So let's see that once more. So get an oxygen across. Split that a couple of times to get helium, which is what you actually want to be using. And then split across again, but fuse it to get the chlorine here. And then with chlorine and hydrogen here, you can just do the usual thing of bringing stuff across.
All this is conceptually very simple, but it leads to a lot of waste atoms that take up space. So this is probably why no one did this at their scoring solution.
Yeah, this is probably not really good for rectangle size at all, and also number of fuses and splits when you have these initialization things going all over the place might be a problem. So also Enigme has only 1 fuser, limitless outputs, and this one is slightly more rectangle size optimized, I think, or at least more concentrated.
Unfortunately, there's a small tail at A8.
Yeah, that doesn't seem all that necessary, to be honest, but whatever. So the first chlorine already got brought across, and then there's an oxygen. And this one is building a waste stick in here, and then it gets the helium from there. And this is a rather interesting way of swapping these 2 atoms around. The 2 walls help each other with that. So yeah, Enigme, thanks for the challenge. Because of this, I didn't procrastinate with the real solve. Same for Bruchius, who actually got hooked on the challenge and then made the solution rather quickly rather than procrastinating that. So seems to have helped several people with actually starting on the level. And this also is keeping a helium in here and using helium to fuse hydrogen into and then splitting that out again, as I think also Enning May said earlier, is possible. So actually being used by a solution here. And Big Mango had honestly considered doing this for a real solution. Biggest problem with this is that it would be nice to bond the waste into a stick that you just push up. The helium messes this up, unfortunately. An atom like carbon doesn't have this issue when splitting. Yeah. So,
Why would it help to make waste stick? It's like 2 atoms worth of waste.
yeah, so no idea. I don't really think this has the potential to be a good scoring solution, but I don't know. If it was a good way of doing things, maybe somebody would have tried it out more seriously.
Anime says that it's hard to manage this with a single split fuse. Well, I didn't know. Well, I guess this is an opening that requires a lot of fusion operations compared to the others, and they are very one-off kind of fusion operations. So they aren't easily mergeable.
I mean, actually, there's only one fuse command, but there are 3 split commands here, so it's more splits than fuses. Okay. So this is a slightly better way in terms of cycles and I think rectangle size. Yeah, this is 80 and this is 9 by 7, so 63. Have a look at number of splits. 1, 2, 3, 2 fuses, another split. I think also in terms of splits and fuses, this is worse. So Enning May has the more optimized one, even though neither of those are particularly optimized. And then we have one more solution, which is a single Waldo solution, which I made today. It is inspired by a Kuroku scoring solution, so not entirely original, but it only uses one split command right here and one fuse command somewhere down there, and has a rectangle size of 7 by 7, so 49, which I don't think is too bad for single Waldo. So let's have a look at how this works. Creates helium up there and splits it across. Uses it again to have the helium in the middle, and it grabs the chlorine stick, but it's not quite time for it. First, the helium needs to move over one more spot. Or even 2 more spots. One more spot it was. And then it brings the chlorine across. And this solution also uses hitting the fuse twice in between doing this. So it hits the fuse once here and then grabs the input and fuses that into there by hitting the fuse again. And this chlorine is just waste, which will just sit there for the rest of all eternity. So one thing that is a little bit interesting here is that for every input and every output, this stuff generally runs 4 times. So there is this 4 counter. So once between going left or down. So that's the 2 counter, and then one of the directions has another 2 counter. So every 4th time it goes down here to output and input. And the way I had intended this to work is that this path down here, which activates twice, was supposed to lead into this flip-flop. For reasons that are a little bit too... So just trust me that it would make sense if this path led into that flip-flop. Because then all the paths merge up, and for the 4 times that the Waldo runs through things, it also hits this flip-flop 8 times and goes to the left 4 times, and all of that seemed nice. But it was actually quite hard to find a path to there, and would make it like 7 by 8 or something. And then I just made the path not go into that flip-flop and just go to the left again. And that worked, which was quite convenient. It just causes the Waldo to go to the left a couple more times than necessary, but this is only really used for initialization, so that doesn't really matter. And then there's this one grab drop right here, which just delays the thing from the chlorine stick from moving into the space where things happen too early. And that worked out quite nicely. So yeah, the flip-flops aren't really doing what I initially intended, but they still work out. And it is a rather slow solution, but with 50 symbols, it is the lowest symbol solution. And that's it for all the solutions to this round. There is the final round that started yesterday, elements of finite simple groups, where you are supposed to solve Latin squares as you would solve Sudokus. So,
or maybe not.
Or not. Well, you can solve Sudokus in many different ways, and this is a puzzle similar to Sudoku. So you have a 4x4 thing, and you need to have a unique atom in every row and column out of the 4 atoms that are provided for this level. And these question marks all need to be replaced, which can now be done with fusion lasers in the updated version of the level. Initially, I was using the Greek elements here, which sadly don't fuse into question marks, which I should have tested before releasing the level. Yeah, and you get some... so basically all the 4 atoms that are used here to somehow create a Latin square based on this puzzle, and you need to create 100 of them.
Since the primary metric for this level is symbols based.
Yeah. Go on.
Okay, no, I have no continuation.
Okay, so the primary metric of this is symbols. And also a little bit of grab drops and a tiebreaker by cycles. But I find it unlikely that that will actually come to matter. So this is this year's computational puzzle. You basically have to implement a Sudoku solver, but Sudoku with only rows and columns, not with boxes. And only 4 by 4 because that is the largest size that you can comfortably handle in SpaceChem.
Well, you just have to do Latin's way or computation. It doesn't have to be Sudoku solver.
Yeah. Okay, so that is the puzzle. With that, we have shown fun points. I completely forgot about those. Thanks for reminding me.
My judgment is that both solutions with one fusion laser should get to 1 fun point for that.
Okay, so you both get 1 fun point, Rockwer and Enigme. Enigme also has the fastest solve. Sure, that is true, but Enigme did not specify that this is supposed to be cycles optimized. I mean, Enigme also has another solution, which probably was just an attempt at a scoring solution, but it has a nice cycle count, so I don't know. I'm fine with giving both 1 point for this. But if anyone feels like Enigme should get slightly more, I'm also open to that argument. Okay.
I guess I'm down to awarding anyway an additional 1/8 of a fun point.
So are you
For the
saying
reason
that Enigme should...
for numerology reasons.
Okay. Are you saying that Enigme should get more than 1 fun point, or that we should reduce Kuroku's fun points?
No, I mean award Kuroko 1 fun point and anime 9/8.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we did say that fun points don't follow any rules and are just based on in-the-moment judgment. So let's do that.
Yeah, fun points are for fun.
I also...
You don't have to get fun points in order to have fun. We are not the fun police.
I mean, I also had fun with this and don't get any fun points for it. So I think that's fine. And with that, we have seen all the solutions. We have awarded fun points. We have showcased the new level and also the final level. I think that's everything. Enigme really enjoyed the round. That's great to hear. Big Mango Head is still typing something. I'll wait for that. A cool puzzle. I'm surprised there were more. I'm surprised that there were some similar. Can't read anymore. Cool puzzle. I'm surprised that there were some similarities in solutions. From Big Mango Head. I mean, yeah. So the there were like some ways of solving this, but with the restriction of only one fuser and one fusion command, one split command, and having to optimize for area, that also restricts the solution space a bit. So I think it naturally led to some similar solutions. Rex kicks is sad that Sir did not participate in the round. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but people have other things to do and sometimes just don't have the time for this. It's totally fine to just participate when you have time and when it's enjoyable for you. But I'm glad for everyone that participates, and we even had a new player this round. So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should have had a system where you could pick a round to not count. So you could miss a round where you wouldn't have time to solve it anyway.
And the problem with that is that in order for that to work, you need somewhat balanced metrics. And if we have these unbalanced metrics like we have, there are some rounds where not participating matters more than other rounds.
I guess Opus Magnum does it better because they have more uniformity with their rounds.
Yeah, when every round awards the same number of points and has a similarly fair metric, then that is an easier thing to do, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to end the recording with that. Bye-bye.